Hey guys, it's a beautiful day here in Vancouver, Canada, and we're looking at a delightful little electric bike. This is just perfect for a compact, just get around the city, easy to take in and out of a condo, elevators. I've been doing all of that today. This is the Propella MINI, and it's priced right as well. This thing is $949 USD, and they offer free shipping in the US and Canada, which is really cool. If you get this, it's an online type of bike, so they send it to you in a big cardboard box. You've got to do a few things. Got to put the wheel on, put the saddle on the seat post there, get the handlebars dialed in. They actually have a really nice video tutorial, and all things considered, it's not too difficult because it's just so light. This thing weighs about 35.5 pounds. I weighed it as is with the battery and the pedals, everything installed, which is very light for an electric bike. Now, of course, this thing has a lower capacity battery pack, 252 watt hours. I would say an average battery pack for a full-size bike is closer to 500 watt hours, so it's about half of that. And then we've got a Bafang planetary geared hub motor in the rear, rated at 250 watts up to maybe 400. They say 35 newton meters of torque, and this is a single speed. So in some ways that keeps it clean and simple. There's no derailleur hanging down. You don't have to worry about that longer chain slapping around, although they do have a nice clear sticker here to protect the frame regardless. But see how tight that is? And I love that they went with white, kind of matches the accents. The point is, it's very simple. And it's geared fairly high, meaning it's comfortable to pedal at higher speed. The top speed on this bike is 18 miles per hour. Most Class 1 electric bikes I see go up to 20 miles per hour. Because we have a smaller wheel diameter here, the motor actually gets a pretty good mechanical advantage. If a smaller motor is turning a really tall wheel, you know, it's just having to work a lot harder. So all things considered, and with the rides that I've done so far, it actually feels kind of zippy and it's really fun. Now, this is a Class 1 electric bike, meaning there's no throttle or anything. So it relies on pedal assist. And on this side, you can see they've got that nice sealed, really flush cadence sensor, 12 magnets in there. It's very responsive, not as responsive as a torque sensor or a fancy multi-sensor, but as far as cadence sensors go, it's pretty good. And I love that they've got most of the wires internally routed on this bike. I mean, we've got the brake line here along the top, but you can see that they've got some of the electronics going through this purpose-built frame, and I really appreciate that. Up front, it's very standard, 100mm hub spacing, with a standard 9mm axle, quick release skier right there. No quick release at the seat clamp, which surprised me. It's like, if you've got a quick release up front, you might as well have it for the seat so you can raise and lower that, and maybe you're trying to get that full leg extension, but then you're gonna tuck it away in your closet or something and lower it down, or maybe just take that seat off if you're parking at a bike rack. You don't want people to tamper with it or steal it. In the rear, we've got a sliding dropout, and that's how they get that chain tight. You can see that right here. I think it's done pretty well. There's no derailleur guard to protect your motor power cable. So that's one of the vulnerabilities. If the bike tips or if this gets snagged somehow. But you'll see it comes out at like a 90-degree angle, and then it tucks pretty quickly below that right chainstay. 50-tooth aluminum alloy chainring up here. So they actually upgraded this a little bit, made it a little bit bigger for this particular version of the Propella. We've got a demo bike here, V1.2, so this is slightly newer than some of the older ones you might have seen. The bike's been around for a while, and another one of the things that's changed is this display panel, which I'm excited about. I'm going to go into that in a minute, but first I'll go through the rest of the hardware down here. So standard 170mm length crank arms, so you have this nice smooth pedal cadence. It's not like tiny crank arms. However, because these are smaller wheels, your ground clearance isn't great. You could get pedal strikes on this, especially if you're turning sharply or going over obstacles. These pedals, they work pretty well. They're fairly light, kind of a cage style, and mud and snow and stuff can push right through, but they just aren't as big as like the Well-Go platform pedals that I kind of like. All in all, they work okay, but if you do tip this bike to the side a lot, this can start to get sharp or even kind of mushed in over time. Keep that in mind. Pedals are pretty easy to replace if you want to. The rims, and you'll notice the saddle and the grips and even the battery have this blue accent on them, and the wheel size here is 20 by 1.75, which is kind of like a hybrid tire pattern and a hybrid size. It's not as narrow as a road bike. You get a little bit more comfort and stability, which is nice because when you've got these smaller wheels, you have a higher attack angle and you tend to feel those bumps and cracks and stuff a little bit more. I like having that extra air volume, and I think it's like 35 PSI at the low end, and maybe it goes up to, let's see, 45 PSI. So you can actually lower these a little bit if you're a lighter person like myself. Love the black spokes. They're a little bit thicker in the rear to give you some extra stability. These are e-bike rated tires by CST. I don't, you know, they don't have reflective sidewall stripes. The bike doesn't have any lights or anything built into it, and it only comes in black. So in terms of safety, the white chain is kind of nice, the blue rims and stuff, but they do sell Cygo Light, like rechargeable kind of rubberized lights that you can mount on this, and my helmet has a light in it, and a lot of people put it on their backpack. Please be careful and ride safe out there. You know, this bike does sit a little bit lower to the ground. That's one of the trade-offs. Another trade-off is, you know, it does have bottle cage bosses here along the down tube, but that's not a very convenient place to reach for an actual bottle cage. You know, maybe you have a folding lock or a mini pump down here. I feel like they could have put bottle cage bosses right here. There's pretty good space, or even along kind of the bottom of that top tube, but they didn't. The good news is it's really easy to lift the bike from here, and you can even hang it on some car racks. The wheelbase is a little bit shorter than a full-size bike, which means it might not fit in some of the tray-style car racks. You might want to check that out. I have measured all the dimensions back at ElectricBikeReview.com as usual, so you can kind of look at the wheelbase and see if it works. I feel like a lot of people could just put this in the back of your station wagon, or even the trunk of your car, and maybe you take off that front wheel. I love that in addition to the bottle cage bosses, we do have bosses in the rear for adding a rear rack, or potentially like a fender. You can see there's a hole right here as well. And then up front, same thing. We got a hole, we got some bosses along those lowers on the fork. It's pretty nice. I mean, they really, you know, they didn't just do a generic thing. It's got like a bunch of different mounting points, which gives you a lot of flexibility in how you use this. I don't think too many people would set it up as like a cargo bike, but still, it's really nice to have some of those options. And I think in terms of strength and weight distribution, with the battery right there low on the bike, weighs about 3.5 pounds, maybe 6 pounds on that motor back there. Again, 35.5 pounds total. Look at this nice long steer tube right here, and then we have this huge spacer that elevates the handlebar, which is, I would call this kind of maybe a mid-rise. It's got a little bit of a back sweep, so you can rotate this back or forward to extend your reach. You could even replace this stem with something that's a little taller or longer and set this up. Again, one frame size. The seat post here is 27.2. Very easy to replace that with like a suspension post for improved comfort, since there's no suspension fork or anything. 350 millimeters standard post length for this. And then the saddle, it's actually very comfortable. I mean, yeah, you know, they did the blue thing, and the blues don't perfectly match, but when you step back, it looks cool. It's cool enough, right? And so in terms of the look, they nailed it. But comfort, they really did a good job on this. I actually really like that. I want to call it out. Kickstand positioning, excellent. You're not getting pedal lock. This thing offers adjustable length. It snaps up just really, look at that. It's very firm. Like, this thing is solid, and I haven't had any problems with the bike tipping over. I haven't been kicking that with my left shoe. You know, sometimes your heel's hanging out and you pedal along like this and you actually hit the kickstand. I haven't had that at all, which I appreciate. And then maybe the last thing we should talk about here are the brakes. So we have 5-star levers, which is, yeah, it's maybe a cheaper brand, but they both have motor inhibitors, which is nice. You're not going to be competing with that 250-watt motor back there, but still, it's very nice that they have these. And then when you go down to the actual calipers and rotors, these are Shimano parts. So this is 160 millimeter rotors, front and rear, with those mechanical calipers here. Pretty easy to adjust with your own tools. Of course, I'm a big fan of hydraulic, but for something like this that's trying to be cheap, you know, $1,000, I feel like this gets the job done. And you know, you see that Shimano name, Tourney TX, that's cool. And look at how this brake hose here, it's actually angled down. So that wire, if it gets condensation or dust on it, it's gonna kind of like drip this way. It's not gonna go into the tube, and it really doesn't have to go that far. So in terms of hand strength. Sometimes I comment on this right brake lever for the rear brake. Sometimes with mechanical brakes you have to pull really hard, and if you're someone who's, you know, got weak hands or something, it's a bit of a chore, and then it can get gunked up over time. So I really like the positioning on this, and again, it's fairly easy to adjust yourself aftermarket if you need to tighten or loosen that. In fact, I think it even has the barrel adjuster, so you can unscrew these a little bit and it increases the length of the hose, and you end up with that nice kind of progressive braking action. There we go. We got some friends visiting us over here. So with that said, I'm going to take the battery pack off the bike because I think that's kind of a fun thing to do. I tend to, you know, especially a bike like this, maybe you park it down at the bike rack or leave it in a garage. This thing uses Samsung lithium-ion battery cells, and it's a good idea to store it in a cool, dry location. Extreme heat will degrade the cells over time, and extreme cold, it can halve your range, right? And this is already kind of a low capacity. So this thing is spring-loaded, kind of go like that, and then lift up at the back, right? 3.5 pounds on this. Propella 36 volt, 7 amps. It's the V4. Got a fuse and everything. And then there's the charging port at the front. You can charge this on the bike if you want to. You can just flip this up. It's got a standard barrel plug right there. Very cute little charger, pretty high quality. I've actually seen this MDA company before. It weighs just 1 pound, 42 volt, 2 amp. So to fill this battery, it's just gonna be 2, maybe 3 hours if it's completely empty. Very cool. I'm a big fan of that. Small enough that you could fit this in a backpack easily. It's gonna make the bike even easier to lift and transport. Just line that up, it clicks right on. Don't even need your keys to get it back on the bike. And the keys even have the Propella logo carved into them. That's cool. Okay, the display is pretty nice. Again, this is, I think, still king meter, but it's a new design. Looks pretty cool. There's a power button on the right side, a plus and a minus. No charge ports on this, no USB or anything like that. There's no app. It's very simple, but I kind of like that. A little bit of reaching to get to it, but the buttons are rubberized. It feels fairly durable, and even in the bright light, I can read this pretty well. Now, you might see flickering because the LEDs are pulsing and it's kind of conflicting with my camera capture rate, but it looks very good to me. We've got speed. If we tap the power, we go to trip. Tap it again, odometer. So those are the 3 readouts. I think speed is only in miles per hour. There's no way to change that. If you want to do walk mode, you can hold that minus key for a second and the bike will push itself slowly. It's kind of handy if you get a flat tire or you're just walking it through a park or something like that. And then there are 5 levels of pedal assist. So you can go 0, in which case I don't even know. I guess you just use this as a speedometer because, again, there are no lights or anything wired in. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 is pretty zippy. I mean, you definitely feel it, and you can hear the motor. Here we are in the shade. You can really see the display now. It actually might be a little too bright at night. There really isn't a settings menu here, and so when it comes to trying to dim this or change the units or anything, you're kind of limited. Anytime you change the level of assist, it momentarily goes back to that readout, and then it brings you back to either speed, trip, or odometer. If you want to change the kind of reset the trip distance, you can hold minus and power, and that clears it. So there's another little tip for you. Okay guys, I'm in the highest level of pedal assist. It does take a second to get started here, kind of push, but then once the motor kicks in, it works pretty well. I'm actually going to climb this hill here. It's pretty steep. You know, I'm climbing. It would be difficult to start from standstill, but once I had the momentum, the motor did a really good job. So you can see the cobblestone here. I've noticed there's a little bit of rattling with the battery. I'm just going to try to demonstrate that here. It's not too bad. And again, the battery is pretty compact and lightweight. This thing is attached with 2 bolts to the frame, so it's not like I have seen other ones that they're using 3 and stuff, but given how light it is, about 3.5 pounds, it works pretty well. I often like to do the no hands ride test, and it works pretty well on this bike, even with the smaller wheels. And that's just trying to test the stability. It comes back to how wide those tires are and what the terrain is like. It's a little bit tippy, a little bit squirrelier than a full-size bike, but it's not as bad as it could be. I think the geometry on this is set up pretty well. The simplicity, the lightweight of this, it makes it a joy to ride. I use the word delightful initially because sometimes there's so many things to think about. You got an app and there's all these buttons and stuff. I like how simple this is. The price point is great. Again, that is the Propella MINI. For the full written review on this, check out ElectricBikeReview.com. I do have a compare tool so you can see some other bikes, different price points, different sizes. I also have some forums so you can see what people have to say about the bike who actually own it. I've been riding it for a couple days, having a really good time. Of course, their site has a bunch of bags and accessories and suspension posts and stuff like that, so you really can dial this thing in. It's not just a mini bike that's limited. I love the rear rack option, the fenders, all that stuff. I love you guys. I hope you have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time.